in around 2017, I started thinking very deeply about my life. And when I thought about it, I realized that it was all very messed up and I hadn't had a great time. I just really thought about it, and I felt worried about my future. Like, where is this all going? That was, a concern of mine. But then, one thing I realized, one obstacle, if you like, was that, you see, my parents had abused me throughout my childhood years. And I didn't have one shred of evidence of that. You see, everything I've showed you so far in this video, I did not have much of it, maybe some of it, but not all of it in a couple of years ago. So at that time, it was very difficult for me to reach out to anyone and just be like, hey, look, this is what's happened to me and I'm going through this, because it's really hard to, how can I explain this to them? Like, I need some kind of evidence to show them so that they'll understand and they'll believe me. Except I didn't have evidence. So I decided to take it on myself to start searching for and accumulating evidence in various forms. I started recording phone calls. I started saving emails and texts which I thought might be relevant. Then I had a thought. So my CAMHS ordeal back in 2011, it's an ordeal that left me traumatized. It's something I can never forget for the rest of my life. Back when I was 15 in 2011, it was a very dark time for me. All the other teenagers my age were having the time of their lives. They were partying away. So for them, their memories looking back when they were 15 will be very different to my memories, because my memories, unfortunately, was this nightmare. The CAMHS ordeal is one that really affected me. And I wanted to investigate further. So obviously, I had my experience, but I wanted to go behind the scenes and investigate what actually happened and the extent of what happened. So how was I going to do that? Well, I decided to submit what is known as a subject access request in the UK. A subject access request is basically a way that an individual can request information that is held about them from any organization, from schools, from pretty much any organization, hospitals. So I sent in a letter to Glan Clwyd Hospital, which is the hospital that the whole CAMHS thing took place in. And for about 2 months, I didn't get any response. So I just assumed that maybe they didn't have my information. They didn't have, because it's been a long time, so maybe they didn't have it. Or maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, they haven't responded. So I pretty much gave up. But then, through the post came a thick brown envelope. I opened it. My eyes fell out at what I saw. And my blood boiled at what I saw. they'd sent me about 43 pages. I counted them, some 43 pages full of documents, letters, records, notes from the CAMS ordeal. And when I read the kind of things they'd written about me, and when I'd learnt of the kind of things that had taken place, I felt sick. I want to go through and analyze that with you right now. I want you guys to appreciate that even looking at this stuff really disgusts and upsets me. So I've highlighted some parts of these documents which I think are interesting, which you may or may not think are interesting. So anyway, let's dive in. Let's dive straight in. So it says, "Dear Dr. Drury, I was asked by my colleague, Miss Catherine Casemore, community psychiatric nurse, to meet with Dr. Samasundaram." That's spelled wrong. That's not how you spell my mother's surname. It's actually spelled like this. It's Somasundaram, Vrishni's mother, to offer some consultation into the case. This appointment was to discuss with Miss Casemore and Vrishni's mum. In this sentence, they've said Vrishni's mum. And in this sentence, they've said Vrishni's mother. Anyway, Miss Casemore and Vrishni's mum where to go from here, as it is very clear that Vrishni does not want to engage with CAMS at this moment in time. The appointment today, 27th of January 2012, was initially spent getting a summary, and it was good to hear that there were no severe significant behavioral disturbances. What Dr. Samasundaram was describing was oppositional behavior displayed by Vrishni towards herself at home. Dr. Samasundaram was acknowledging that she does tend to give in to Vrishni's requests for fear of a similar outburst occurring. So she's already a victim now. She's already been painted as a victim, like some, because they've said that she's scared of my outburst, when actually every night it was her terror of me that I was afraid of. Anyway, that happened in October 2011, which Miss Casemore, blah, blah, blah. What was also reported today was Vrishni was displaying anger towards her father and not wanting to speak to him, but also wanting her mum and dad to speak to each other when she was around. Again, a similar pattern of mum submitting to her demands for the same reasons was repeated. That I find really interesting, because earlier on in this video, you might remember that on my recent GP records, my father made that same allegation. And this document is obviously dated early 2012. So if they made this allegation in 2012 when I was 15, and they're making the same allegation when now, you already know there's something wrong there. I think it's a completely unwarranted and bizarre claim to make. Because why on earth would a young girl not want her mother and father to speak to each other? And why on earth would she be displaying anger towards her father? I just want to clear this up once and for all, because I think it's so laughably ludicrous, and I don't want to comment on this again. I could care less whether the two of them speak to each other. I really could care less whether the two of them speak to each other. In fact, I think the two of them are right for each other. They're just a perfect match, because they're both as rotten as each other. And they're like Bonnie and Clyde. They should speak to each other more, actually. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, and there's one more sentence which I haven't highlighted. It says, it's clear that Vrishni is not presenting any behavioral problems at school and is functioning academically and socially. That's not quite true, because socially I was not flourishing. I was all on my own. I was bullied every single day. Anyway, so the next one. Our combined understanding of her presentation is as follows. Vrishni is experiencing increasing pressure to obtain high grades for her GCSEs. This pressure is predominantly placed by Vrishni on her own self. I found that sentence interesting, and that's why I've underlined it in red. Because you can see they're really trying to place emphasis on, like, they're trying to say, no one's placing any pressure on me. It's just me doing it to myself. It's just all me doing it to myself. And the next sentence, it says, it is clear that Vrishni may be predisposed in that they love using fancy words when it's really unnecessary. It's clear that Vrishni may be predisposed in that she has always been an anxious girl who tends to have high-achieving perfectionist traits. That makes me sound like some kind of a pedigree dog. High-achieving perfectionist traits. Okay, so that's the first page. And I want to move on to the next page now. We acknowledge the fact that Vrishni was going through adolescence and was in specific developmental stage of her life. And the behavior that she was displaying was in keeping with what would be expected in normal teenage rebellion behavior. I was as far away from a rebellious teenager as can possibly be. If you want to see some rebellious teenagers, let me show you an example here.
I'm not wearing that. No way, Jose.
Hey, would be cute.
No, are you having a laugh? I am not wearing that. I'm not wearing that underneath.
Go.
No.
If Hannah won't meet the PEC standard, she cannot join tonight's get-together.
I don't want my family and my kids looking at your
There's nothing wrong with it. You can't
undergarments.
see mine.
Actually, you can.
Wear that.
Nicolene believes that standing firm and enforcing boundaries are the key to good parenting.
Yeah, but it's low cut. They won't let me wear it.
Yeah, but that's going to be cool.
She'll never make a threat that she isn't prepared to carry out.
But you're still having an attitude problem.
Yeah, because look at the state of me. I look like a hippie.
She can't go.
James leaves with Spencer to get to the family gathering on time. Nicolene is left to face the wrath of Hannah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I'd say come here to change, but you can't just expect me to change like that.
Right now, just about everything that I say, you're arguing with.
You make me feel like you're ashamed to take me as myself, to see your family like it's some special thing. That's why I'm pissed off with you.
Which is why it's probably not wise for us to go then.
Sam, let's go then. I'm going out in a bit, girl. Don't suck my fat, you
She's very strong opinions, and that she pretty much only cares about her image. And I hope if she ever decides to let down her wall just a little bit, that we can show her something bigger to care about, something better. I mean, family, relationships, those things are all way more important than somebody's image. And I hope she gets that.
She's made me cover all my body up. She just irritates me to pieces just because she's a fucking fat Bible basher. Doesn't mean I want to be one.
The first lesson of the day is English.
Good morning, class. Good morning. Please come in.
But before they get underway, the teens are invited to talk about their lifestyles back at home.
I have a lot more freedom than what most people in this country do. I drink, I smoke, I do drugs.
You said that you do drugs. Have you stopped or are you continuing?
Not whilst I'm here, I'm not. But when I get home, I'm going to have a really nice big joint.
How well did you do in school?
I didn't do too great at school. I got 2 A stars in science, 3 C's in business, and then I failed everything else.
My mum sent me here because I'm quite rude, I don't go to college. Sometimes I come home at like 6 in the morning and me and my mum don't like get on really well, so that's why she sent me here.
What's the worst thing you've done to upset your parents?
It's probably just like being rude to them. I don't like have probably that much respect for them. I argue with them a lot.
So what is your ambition in life?
I don't really have one at the moment. I just want to be like rich because I love money.
So that right there, what you just saw, those are some good examples of rebellious teenagers, and I was as far away from that as can possibly be. Another thing that doesn't make sense here is that in the next sentence, you can see they're talking about my culture, and Indian culture, traditional Indian culture, tends to be quite strict. So rebellious teenagers are quite unheard of, really, in the Indian culture. That's something, the whole concept of rebellious teenager is something quite Western. Anyway, we explored the possibility of there being a cultural identity mismatch, which Vrishni herself was coming to terms with. Right, now, what on earth do they mean by that? They're clearly touching on that's definitely a reference to my Indian ethnicity. And it's quite a strange thing to write, considering that, that sentence makes it seem as though I only recently came to this country and had a culture shock. At this time, I had lived in this country for nearly 10 years. And I had adjusted to the culture quite okay. I never had any problems with the culture in the UK. I just got on with it. Vrishni has a strong desire to be inquisitive about matters including philosophy, religion, social customs and personal rights. With this knowledge that she has gained, she tends to form strong views about what is right and wrong in relation to her life and future. She also displays a sensitivity that perhaps decisions in the future may be made without her say, which has prompted her to find out what her rights are from agencies such as Childline. These sensitivities seem to become more prominent after watching a documentary at school regarding some cultures in eastern parts of the world. Fucking hell, that's all I can say to that. Because it's such a ludicrous paragraph, loaded with really bizarre, ludicrous statements. I don't know what to say, really. I don't know what to say. She displays a sensitivity that perhaps decisions in the future may be made without her say so. What kind of what is that meant to mean? She displays a sensitivity that perhaps decisions in the future may be made without her say. Why would you write that? And what does that have to do with my religious beliefs? And then they've talked about, prompted her to find out what her rights are from agencies such as Childline. It's such a bizarre thing to say. So what has my religious beliefs have to do with me contacting Childline? Maybe I contacted Childline because I was desperate and because I was in such a miserable, horrible situation that my parents were creating for me that I felt the need to call Childline. I don't even know what to say. And the last sentence is hilarious, actually. These sensitivities seem to become more prominent after watching a documentary at school regarding some cultures in the eastern part of the world, it says. Just read that sentence, right? Apparently, I just watched a documentary at school regarding Eastern culture, and that made me sensitive, is what they're saying. It's so strange. That's all I can really say about that paragraph, you guys. Let's move on. We also acknowledge that Vrishni appeared to be pushing boundaries with her mother as she was seeing that her mother was giving in to her demands. So again, they're trying to present me as the villain and my mother as the victim, the poor victim. My mother is the saintly victim who's terrified of me and giving in to my demands. That's basically... When Vrishni's mother tries to implement a boundary, she seems to be undermined by Vrishni's maternal grandparents who tend to side with her. It appears that Vrishni's grandparents are only hearing one side of the story, but it's been difficult for Vrishni's mother to get her point across to her own parents. Aww. The advice that the grandparents give to Vrishni's mother is essentially to give in to her demands. Now, that paragraph is very important, you guys. We need to talk about that paragraph. It's absolutely sinister. Because you know from what you've seen in this video already that my grandparents have witnessed me being abused as a child by my father and my mother. And they've been very concerned about me. And it's really alarming how beautifully they've twisted that in this paragraph. The real villain in all of this has been painted as the victim once again. It's just a case of the poor mother who everyone's mistreating. And it talks about hearing only one side of the story. Listen. There's only one truth in all of this. There's no your side and your truth and my truth. There is the truth. And the question is, what is that truth? Because there is only one truth. You've seen already that whenever my grandparents open their mouths to express any kind of concern that they have about me or about anything else, my mother will swiftly and viciously shut them down. And they're quite scared of her. And they're the ones who've been left voiceless. And I'm definitely the one who's been left the most voiceless in all of this. We reiterated to Mum that in our opinion, Vrishni does not suffer from a serious mental illness. And we cannot force Vrishni to engage if she does not want to. That I find interesting. And that's why I've underlined it. Because when I was in these sessions, I expressed to Catherine Casemore, the psychiatrist, she's the one who conducted the sessions. I expressed to her repeatedly that I do not wish to be here. I'm very much upset by all of this. I don't think this is appropriate, and I told her I don't wish to be here. And you know what she told me? She told me that I was forced to be there. She told me that she could use physical force to keep me there against my will. And now she's written that she can't force me to be here. So what she told me to my face and what's been written here, there's a complete mismatch there. Management plan. We felt that it was important to advise and reassure Dr. Samasanbaram that things should get easier as exam stresses pass and when the family is all living consistently under one roof. As you are aware, Vrishni's father is completing his studies in London and is only back home for half the week. Everything is because of my exams. Everything that's wrong is because of my exams. And me being stressed about my exams. My father being away in London was brilliant for me. I functioned a lot better when he was not around. And I felt much safer when he wasn't around. And whenever he visited, and he used to visit once a week, or whenever, like once a fortnight, I dreaded his visits. And when he came over, it was absolute hell. that's another page complete, explained that it was important for both parents to come with a consistent view so as Vrishni would not find areas of weakness. So they've painted me as some kind of a vampire, some kind of a psychopath who's searching for weakness and who's praying for weakness, which is exactly what my abusers are doing, by the way. Miss Casemore will be sending out some information on Parent Behavioural Management course, looking at coping with teenagers and information about the service Relate, which helps to support families. So again, it's like they've made it out that she's the one who needs support. She's the victim in all of this. You see, I believe that Catherine Casemore and all these corrupt professionals knew I was being abused. I believe they knew what the situation was. But they've gone to extraordinary lengths to twist, mask it and pass it off as something else entirely. In other words, they wanted to take what was an abusive situation and turn it into this kind of mental health / bratty teenager diaspora. Vrishni's presenting concerns included low mood and high levels of anxiety, change in behaviour which was described as uncharacteristic, verbally aggressive towards her mother. Vrishni was initially seen on an urgent basis as there was concerns which indicated possible significant mental health problems. Next paragraph, let's just look at the sentence which I've highlighted. Shows an exceptional ability to demonstrate an understanding of her difficulties. Which of course, I knew I was being abused. And I expressed that to the psychiatrist again and again. I kept telling the psychiatrist, Catherine Casemore, look, my parents are abusing me. I was aware of the fact that I was being abused. So it's quite twisted that they've written shows an exceptional ability to demonstrate an understanding of her difficulties. She admits that this commitment to her studies may make her vulnerable to stress and internal pressure. She admits, it says. Like, I've admitted it, I've confessed. Both Vrishni and her mother agree that she does not feel pressured regarding schoolwork by anybody else. Ooh, I find that one very interesting, and it's the second time that they've made that sort of a remark. Because if you remember, I think it was on the first page, they said something along the lines of pressure predominantly placed by Vrishni on her own self. So here they've made it even more explicit and less subtle. They're really trying to emphasize that no one's hurting me in any way. It's just me doing it to myself. It's just me doing it all to myself. Vrishni describes over-worrying about certain issues related to her culture and future at times, and will present to her mother with excessive questions and reassurance seeking. Oh my God. I'm struggling, you guys, to do this. The reason I'm struggling to do this is because every single sentence that they've written is chock full. It's loaded with bullshit. It's just loaded with bullshit on every level. Each sentence is loaded with bullshit that I'm struggling to even analyze it. Over-worrying, it says. Look at the term over-worrying that they've invented. There's no such word as over-worrying. Over and worrying are two separate words. You can't just hyphenate it and make it into one word because they're two separate words. There's no such word as over-worrying. That's number one. They constantly mention the word culture, and I'll talk more about that later on. But they keep mentioning the word culture and will present to her mother with excessive questions and reassurance seeking. That was basically me pleading her for mercy. When my mother would terrorize me, I would plead with her, saying, "Why are you doing this? What have I done to make you do this to me?" Next paragraph. Vrishni described a significant reduction in her level of anxiety and behavior. She also states that she sleeps on average 9 to 10 hours per night. Vrishni describes a significant reduction, it says. I never made any such comments to them. I never said that to them. They're making things up that I never said to them. And they're saying that I said things that I never said. I never once went in there and said, "Hey, there's a significant reduction in my anxiety and behavior." I never said that. She sleeps 9 to 10 hours per night. Actually, I only slept for about 5 to 6 hours a night. She would begin to worry about various things and vocalize these at bedtime and take a long time to go to sleep. There were some discrepancies between perceptions of sleep patterns. Whew. I'm not even going to comment on that one. Let's go on to the next sentence, because I think the next sentence is very interesting. Describes ongoing frustration around certain things which seem to impact on her stress levels. And those certain things was constant abuse from my parents. And yes, that did impact on my stress levels big time. Next paragraph. Vrishni has been given some information about relaxation and breathing techniques to help with reducing physical symptoms of anxiety and has practiced these methods a little. So this is basically bogus bullshit advice that is just nonsense and that doesn't really help at all. And what I needed was to be safeguarded. I didn't need relaxation techniques. When you're stuck in a house with two psychotic individuals, relaxation techniques and meditation doesn't really cut it. Last paragraph on this page. Vrishni contacted me to let me know that she does not feel she requires further input from CAMHS at this time. During this telephone call, Vrishni stated she did not object to her mother having further contact with CAMHS for advice. I made no such statement at all. I made no such statement. I did phone her, okay, so what happened was this. After about 5 weeks of these torture sessions, I'd had enough. I'd had absolutely enough. And I was at breaking point. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, if I have to see this Catherine Case-Moore again, I'll just end up beating the shit out of her. So I phoned the woman and I said to her, look, I am not coming back here again. I'm not coming back to you again. That's it. I'm just letting you know. She was furious. She screamed at me and she told me that I had to come back in. Next page. Vrishni, you are aware of your heightened levels of anxiety. So she's addressing me directly in that sentence. You are aware of your heightened levels of anxiety, it says. My heightened levels of anxiety was a direct result of their treatment of me. Throughout this document, they make the assertion that I had anxiety and that anxiety was for no reason and that my fears and concerns and worries were irrational. This is nothing but gaslighting. It really, really is. And if you look at the next sentence, it says, you regularly have ongoing thoughts of what if. Same thing again. And this keeps your feelings going, it says. This is them asserting that my thoughts and feelings were irrational and had no reason or meaning behind them. More recently, your GP has prescribed you Phenergan in order to help you sleep. That's where we're getting into the danger zone, because now we're entering dangerous territory there, because now they're actually starting to go into drugs and giving me drugs which were completely unnecessary. I didn't need medication to help me sleep. It was the kind of environment that I was exposed to that affected my sleep. Next sentence. India culture and your understanding regarding arranged marriages. Whoo! So this is like the 4th, 5th time they've mentioned culture and India. I think I can't call it anything but racist, you guys. It's racist. Because they wouldn't write things like this. They would not be writing things like this if I was a Caucasian white girl. The reason they keep mentioning culture and arranged marriages so much is because I'm a brown girl. I was a brown girl. And I was a 15-year-old child. So there shouldn't even be talk of arranged marriages at that age. And if you look at the next paragraph again, they've said it again, looking at different cultures regarding marriage. The change and movement of peers into more social situations and having boyfriends, making you question your future. This is bullshit. I feel like they've just put down any nonsense that jumped into their heads that they could think of. Next paragraph, maintaining factors. Vrishni, you were very clear that your mind is constantly full of worries and concerns, and these are maintained by you asking what-if questions. Consequently, any reassurance given by your parents is dismissed. Those worries and concerns that I had were 100% valid and rational. And they've tried to make it seem like my worries and concerns were irrational. Like the previous paragraph, what they're doing here is known as gaslighting. And if you don't know what gaslighting means, let me explain. Throughout all of these documents, they invalidate, belittle, and downplay the concerns that that young girl that I was had. And it says reassurance given by your parents is dismissed. They didn't give me any reassurance. Everything they were doing to me was the complete opposite of reassurance and compassion. The individuals who composed this document were corrupt individuals. Let me make that clear. Anyway, let's go down to the last paragraph. We discussed your current levels of anxiety, and it appears that the last 2 to 3 weeks have seen a significant change in behaviors that are causing concern to the people around you. So in 2 to 3 weeks, I just magically transformed. And all my behaviors just magically transformed in 2 to 3 weeks. It says causing concern to the people around you. What about the fact that the people around me were causing me concern? And then look at the next sentence. With this in mind, it was felt that Tier 3 camp service was appropriate at this time. However, there appeared to be some reluctance from yourself, Vrishni, about attending further appointments. However, on further discussion with your mum, you agreed that you would attend the camp service to look at skills and strategies that may be supportive and helpful to your future to be able to manage your levels of anxiety and your external behaviors. I did not agree to anything like that. And in the entire document, they cunningly talk around the entire concept of abuse. So they don't even entertain the possibility that maybe I'm being abused here by my parents. And they just sort of talk around it and just try to say that, oh, this girl, she's just like this for no reason, and it's just her behaving badly for no reason, and it's just her being anxious for no reason, and you can see that going on. See, the reason I didn't sleep well at night is because my parents would create an atmosphere of fear and tension and chaos. And the reason I didn't want to attend the sessions was because I knew that all of this was just a nonsense situation disguised as help that wasn't really going to help me at all. Next one, Vrishni, you explained that you still keep in touch with friends from current difficulties. When discussing the current difficulties, Vrishni, you were seen on your own and you explained the difficulties were as follows. Low mood. Vrishni, you felt the main reason for your need to attend camps was having thoughts of being quite low in mood and very tearful. There were no thoughts of self-harm or suicidal thinking. That last sentence, I did not feel that I needed to attend at all. And I said that to them several times, and yet they've twisted it and they've written, I felt the need to attend. Everything about these documents scream corruption. Corruption, malicious, sadistic corruption is all I can see throughout this document on every page. Anxiety. Vrishni, you explained that you feel quite anxious and you have heightened anxiety regarding certain topics and areas of your life, including issues regarding arranged marriages and the rights of other people. Again, that same fucking bizarre sentence that they already wrote like 3 times has come up again. But the next one I find interesting. You explained that you feel under pressure to academically achieve. However, this pressure appears to be self-imposed. So that's the 3rd time that sort of sentence has come up. They're really placing strong emphasis on the whole self-imposed thing. Next paragraph. As a consequence to the heightened anxiety that you are experiencing, there has been a significant behavior change, and Vrishni, you explained that at times you do shout and you become very angry. You do go to your room and have, on occasions, thrown things and used inappropriate language directed at your mum. Right, so let me explain that. My mother's psychological abuse. How do I explain it? I'll explain it by saying that if Osama bin Laden, was left in a room alone with my mother for about 5 minutes, by the end of those 5 minutes, he would be crying and begging for mercy. Her psychological abuse of me was very bad. And night after night, she would terrorize me. And I would take it quietly for about 10-20 minutes. And you know what? I even managed to record some of it back in the day when I was 15. And what I'm about to show you was actually recorded by accident, believe it or not. Before I do that, I just want to draw your attention to something on this page which I haven't highlighted, and that's in the middle of the second paragraph. It says, "You described her behavior as being very odd and gave an example of her wanting to leave the house late at night and also calling your parents in the night expressing concerns to them." I don't know how on earth something like that was used against me rather than in my favor. Because if I was leaving the house late at night and calling my grandparents, that clearly shows that I was desperate. The two of them pushed me to the brink. So I'd phone my grandparents and frantically beg them to help me. And I'd tell them, look, the two of them, they're doing this, I don't know what to do, and please help me. And the atmosphere in that house became unbearable to the point where I felt the need to remove myself from that situation in order to protect my own mental health and sanity. So anyway, here's the recording I want to share with you.
Shut your mouth. I won't have you. Shut your mouth. No as in no, shut your mouth. I'm not having you doing this. I'm going to tell our Tata that you are totally disobedient, making shouting. Shiva, katto kattam kattara. Inga katta kodadunu sonna. இங்க பாருங்க காதை மூடிட்டு கத்து சவுண்ட் குறைவா பேசுங்க. I'm not letting you get away with this. You're being rude. I'm not letting you go to school till you apologize and behave properly. I'm not keeping you at home. Nobody lives in my home like this. Don't answer back. Do not answer me back. Nee room ku do not answer me back. Do not samela par fire alarm mandru. Yeah, she's being extremely fire alarm mandru. I did nothing, Shiva. If I could beat her up, I would beat her up because this is a spanking. First behave properly. Idiot. No, leave the room. I'm not keeping you in this room. Go. Sorry. Go. No. Go. Shut up and go and sit somewhere. Go. Now. Now only go. Don't stay here. You live here, you obey me. Not like this. I'm not holding on to Brad. How can you talk to me like this? I have brought her into the world, fed and clothed, and we have done everything for her. It is her own thing that she forgot. அதுவும் கூட நாம திட்டணும். இது என்ன தெரியுமா சிவா, நீ சொன்னால திட்டாததுனால சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கீங்களா? எங்கடி உன்னோட துணி, எங்கடி உன்னோட இது, ஏன் என் கூப்பிட்டு வந்தா நம்ம ஒவ்வொரு வீட்டுல திட்டுவாங்க. நம்ம அப்படி இல்ல. அதனால இவன் எதிர்த்து கேட்கறா. அவ்வா தாத்தா சொல்லுவாடாமா, அவ்வா தாத்தா நீ அங்க இருக்கிறப்போ எல்லாரும் இவளை பார்த்துக்கவே முடியல, ஹாஸ்டல்ல போட்டுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. நான் என்னது கூட்டிட்டு போய் இங்க வச்சு வளர்த்திட்டு இருக்கிறேன். ஒழுங்கா இருக்கட்டும். என்ன இந்த மாதிரி பிஹேவியர் பேட்டர்ன்ஸ் நான் நீ எவங்க கிட்ட சொன்னாலும் நான் கேர் பண்ண மாட்டேன். சைட்லையும் சொல்லு, யாருக்கோ சொல்லு, ஒரு பேசி டீச்சர் மாதிரி அவங்க ஒரு பாஸ்டர் கொண்டு போய் வைக்கட்டும், அங்கே போய் இருந்துக்குவோம். அப்போ அதான் பிடிச்சதுன்னா அங்கே இருந்துக்குவோம். இங்க அம்மா அப்பா கூட இருக்கிறதுன்னா ஒழுங்கு மரியாதையா சொல்றதை கேட்டுக்கிறாரு. இந்த மாதிரி கத்துறது இல்லை. அப்பா தாத்தா அப்படிதான் சொல்லுவாங்க. அப்பா தாத்தா உங்களை சப்போர்ட் பண்றாங்க, அந்த சொல்றது கரெக்ட் ஆகிடாது. அவங்களுக்கு எப்படியா ஒண்ணு ஏதோ ஒண்ணு என் மேல இருந்தாப்புல உன்னை சொல்லி 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 நல்லா வளர்த்திருக்காங்க. இந்த மாதிரி அவன் கல்விக்கு எதிராக எனக்கு கோட் பண்ணேன் அந்த மாதிரி சொல்றதே ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆஃப் ஆல் ராங். அம்மா அப்பாவுக்கு நீ வந்து கட்டுப்பட்டு அவங்க சொல்றத கேட்டு வளருன்னு சொல்றதுதான் கரெக்ட் அட்வைஸ். அதை நீ ஃபாலோ பண்ணாம நீ எந்த தாத்தா சொல்றது கேட்டாலும் தப்புதான். எல்லா புக்ல எல்லாம் என்ன எழுதி இருக்கு, ஹோலி புக்ல அம்மா அப்பா சொல்றது கேளுதான் போட்டு. இவன் என்னன்னா சொல்லுவாள் அவன் டைம் சொல்லமாட்டான். பின்ன காலையில இருந்து சாயந்தரம் வரைக்கும் மிஷின் வேலை செஞ்சு சோறு பண்ணி போட்டு இருக்கிறோம் இல்ல, நைட் ஷிஃப்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இவ்வளவு வளர்த்திட்டு கைட்லைன் சொல்ல மாட்டா. பின்ன இவ்வளவு கொண்டு போய் பேசிக்கிற மாதிரி எல்லாம் ஒரு ஃபார்ம்ல அவங்க சேர்த்து விட்டுருவாங்க. அவங்க எல்லாரும் இடிப்பாளுங்க, யாருக்கு ஒரு இடி புள்ளி, அப்பதான் இவங்களுக்கு புத்தி வரும். சொல்றாளா என்ன ஒரு பிஹேவியர், என்ன ஆயிடுச்சுன்னு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிற. அங்க உலகத்துல ஒண்ணுமே நம்ம எனக்கெல்லாம் 2 வருஷத்துக்காக ஒருத்தருக்கு யூனிஃபார்ம் வாங்குவோம். நான் அதெல்லாம் பத்திரமா வச்சு அயன் பண்ணி போட்டுருக்கேன். எப்படி இல்லை, நம்ம வந்து புது யூனிஃபார்ம் கேட்டதை வாங்கி கொடுத்தாச்சு. இன்ஃபேக்ட் நான் போன வாரம் இவளுக்கு நான் வந்து லண்டன் சொன்னேன். ஏன்னா இந்த வாரம் என்னால வாங்க முடியாம போயிடும் நைட் விட்டு. அப்புறம் வந்து ஸ்கூலுக்கு லாஸ்ட் வீக் லண்டன்ல இருந்து வேலை முடிச்சுட்டு ட்ரெயின்ல கூட்டிட்டு லண்டனுக்கு வந்து உங்களோட நீங்க 2 நாள் வேலை செஞ்சுட்டு வேலைக்கு நடுவாளிகளை கூட்டிட்டு போய் நேரத்தால அந்த இது வேற பரீட்சை நான் முடிக்கிறேன் கடைசியில சொல்லிட்டு பரவாயில்ல அப்போ நம்ம ஒன்றும் சமைச்சிக்கல பேசாம போனா போகுது. நமக்கு இப்போ வந்து எல்லாம் கிடைக்கிறதுனால இந்த ஒரு சின்ன விஷயத்துக்கு இவ்வளோ சத்தம் போட்டு If I said keep quiet, you just got to keep quiet. Shut up now. Means you don't know your tongue. What a drama shouting. That is not at all required. I have not seen such behavior and I will not have a repeat of this performance ever again. What a horrendous thing to decide. அவங்களாம் இப்படி அடிச்சா புடிச்சா என்ன கழுத்துனா ஒன்னும் ஆகிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி ஐயோ ஐயோன்னு கத்திட்டு பெரிய டிராமா போட்டுட்டு அட்டென்ஷன் சீக்கிங். Let me tell you, shut up, you just cease noise. No more sounds come from your throat, which is fed by me. Just shut. If you still are going to be my doctor, you grow up properly. I have never been like this. For God, doctor, in all my life. If they said any different, they are lying. Because God knows that I have not done anything like this in my life. I have never been allowed to shout at them. Been really, really respectful and fair of them. I have never been like this. You will be this kind and generous. But what you do is, you teach our heads. You can say what you like. You know that's wrong. Frankly, only because we are all too kind and generous and children are behaving like this. And it takes too much pressure on their caregivers. This is just beyond belief. You are not allowed to talk. Just you now, you misuse the power of speech. You shut up. இவளை போனா போகுதேன்னு அம்மா வந்து கவர் பண்ணி அங்கிருந்து ஒருத்தர் வேலை மனசுக்கு வந்து இவளை திருப்பி போர் அடிக்குதுன்னு கூட்டிட்டு போய் லைப்ரரிக்கு இவளை கொஞ்சம் வச்சிருவாங்க. அம்மாவா அப்பாவை பெற்ற அம்மா அப்பாவை எதிர்த்து பேசிட்டு எப்படி ஆடுறா ராட்சசி மாதிரி அடுத்த நிமிஷம் பாருங்க ஸ்லம் டுவெல்லர் மாதிரி நான் அவளோட பல்ல உடைச்சேங்கிறா. இவ போதும் என்ன ஜெயில போடுறதுக்கு. இவனுக்கு அப்படிதான் அப்படியாவது இருந்தா நான் சந்தோஷப்படுவேன். என்னை கொண்டு எங்கேயாவது போடட்டு. இவ அம்மா எல்லாம் கஷ்டப்பட்டாதான் இவ புத்தி வரும். மணி எடுத்து வளர்க்குறேன் பாருங்க. பல்ல உடைச்சுனாமா நானு வாய பாரு. உனக்கெல்லாம் வயிற்று சோறு போடுறேன் பாரு. அதை சொல்லணும் நானு. ஷக்கி டோட்டிமா ஒரு வாரம் சொன்னேன் நடக்கிறதே இல்லை. You have become very bold enough to talk like this. Do not talk to me. ஒரு மீனும் அவளுக்கு வயிற்று நிறைங்க. இன்னும் இல்லை சத்து போட்டு அவ்வளோதான். எப்படி பண்ணி எனக்கு உடம்பு வந்து நான் சாமிகிட்ட போய் சேர்ந்தாதான் எனக்கு நிம்மதியா இருப்பான். You are to obey properly and behave properly. I will not keep a brat in the house. The reward for me. You only deserve to go there. Avva and Tata, you know how they will be. Avva and Tata will not leave you like this. நான் கொடுக்குற செல்லம் எல்லாம் கொடுத்து இத்தனை இது பண்ண மாட்டாங்க. ஏன் பொறுப்புல நீ வளர்ந்தீங்கன்னா அவங்க செல்லம் கொடுக்குற மாதிரி எல்லாம் பண்ணுவாங்க. நீ அவங்க கிட்ட இருக்கிறப்போ நீ வந்து அந்த ஸ்ட்ரிக்ட்னஸ் ஃபீல் பண்ற. அவங்க என்னை வளர்த்திருக்காங்க, எனக்கு பெரிய வளர்ச்சி கேட்பாங்க. அப்போ நீ நினைப்ப அம்மா நீ யார் போக வேண்டாம், நீ எங்க வேணா போ. என்னோட பேரை சொல்லிட்டு வராத. என்ற உள்ளையா இருக்கிறதா இருந்தா இந்த வீட்டை ஒழுங்கா அம்மா அப்பாவை ரெஸ்பெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டு ஒழுங்கா இப்படி வாய இருக்கிறது நாட்டாலும் ஒரு மாசத்துக்கு முன்னாடி அப்படியே இருக்கும். இன்னொரு மாசம் போடுறதுனால ஒன்றும் ஆயிடாது. ஒன்றும் ஆயிடாது. போன
இங்க வாணி நான் பாத்துக்கிறேன். வா யூனிஃபார்ம் பத்தி பேசாத. இங்க வா.
சிவனை வரேன். நான் சாமி கும்பிட போறேன் சாப்பிடறதுக்காக. எங்கிட்ட
சாமி மாட்டாடு சம்மதாரா.
I am more of a human than you are. You are only a child. அப்பா அம்மா கடந்து உன்னை இன்சல்ட் பண்றதுக்கு எனக்கு ரைட் இருக்கு. I will hurt you and you won't block it. Whatever you do, it will follow you. Behave properly. இப்படி நடந்துட்டு வந்து சாரின்னு சொன்னீங்கன்னா நான் ஒத்துக்க மாட்டேன். இப்பவே சொல்றேன். வேணுமா போட்டுட்டு வரமா இதெல்லாம் கூட்டிட்டு போய் நம்ம வாங்கி தருவியா
நீ அதை பத்தி பேசாத கவி
வாங்கி பாருங்க
வாழ்வாழ் பொருள் வாழ்வாழ் தான் பெற்றுவோம் நீக்காக சாமான் சாமான் நீ தான் பெற்றுவோம் போன சப்ளை நல்லா கொண்டாடு
And then she just goes on ranting and raving for another 20 minutes. In case you're wondering what this was about or why they're shouting, it was over her not washing my uniform for 2 weeks running, and me asking her about it and saying, how am I supposed to wear the same smelly clothes to school? And that made her lose it. This was accidentally recorded when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I used to have an MP3 player, and that just got turned on somehow, and I found it. This is what every night was like for me with the two of them. I'd like you, the viewer, to ask yourself the question, could you handle being treated like that every night? Wouldn't you want to run away screaming if you were treated like that? And when I listen to this and I hear the sound of that demonic man's voice as well as this woman, it just brings back so much trauma for me. I would take it quietly for about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then it would reach a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I would snap. And I would start reacting. There comes a point when even if you're a saint, even if you're someone who has the patience of a saint, when you're being terrorized, there does come a point when you react to it and you can't take it anymore. This paragraph right here is a very good example of what is known as reactive abuse, you guys, and this is what it is. You can see here Next page. Vrishni, you described a 12-month history of feeling anxious. Forget the content of what they've actually written. The very tone of the language throughout the document is just so snotty and stuck up and just shows no humanity whatsoever. You also explained that in year 10 you carried out a short course on ethics and philosophy, and the information contained within that course heightened your anxiety. That's laughably absurd. To claim that a documentary that I saw in ethics class at school is giving me anxiety. That's laughably absurd. Okay, I want to state at this point that I did not have anxiety. Anxiety is a medical condition similar to depression, and that's not something I had. My anxiety was a direct result of the circumstances that I was placed in, which is basically my parents' abuse of me. Let's make that clear. Precipitating factor to your concerns regarding arranged marriages within your Indian culture. That's the billionth time they mention arranged marriages in Indian culture, which I, by the way, did not mention to them at any point. I actually didn't mention arranged marriages myself to them at any point. This entire thing is a piss take of the highest order. It's a piss take. You see, these individuals who did this, I think they knew that they were in a position of power. And they knew that I was in a position where I was quite vulnerable and I didn't have any power. And they took full advantage of that. This is my direct message to Catherine Casemore. I challenge you to try messing with me now. Because now I'm a grown woman. I'm 23. I challenge you to try this bullshit with me now and see where it gets you. Because, I mean, it's quite easy to take advantage of a 15-year-old. Whereas cowards generally don't tend to pick on someone their own size. So try me now, you bitch. It's my direct challenge to you. Try me now. I'll fuck you up. That's a promise. Dr. Sama Sanbaram, you described an unremarkable pregnancy. Vrishni was born by normal delivery and was described as a fit and healthy baby who ate and slept well. How the fuck is me being born 15 years ago? The entire document is just so degrading. They try to do this sort of in-depth psychoanalysis of every little aspect of me. But not my parents and anything they're doing. That's not scrutinized in the slightest. I would describe this entire thing as a very sophisticated and advanced corruption. And I can't believe that vampires like these can call themselves mental health professionals. Catherine Casemore. I remember that woman, you guys. She was a white woman with brown hair, and she looked like she was in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, that sort of age. Sitting in that room with her, I just had this feeling that this whole thing wasn't right. Something wasn't right. She was a horrible woman. She was a horrible, horrible woman. She was sadistic. She was sarcastic. She'd smirk at me. She'd provoke me, and then she'd scribble down things like reacts defensively when asked questions. And she had a clipboard and she would just scribble on that clipboard. Throughout the sessions, I kept on telling Casemore that my parents were abusing me, and I told her that I found these sessions highly inappropriate and traumatizing. But she was more than happy to keep making me sit next to my abusive mother. Right. So next page. I saw something on this page which is pretty shocking. If you go down here, it says, you can see that it says, "That man, father, is a threat." Now, I cannot believe that they've dared to write this down. There's a young girl who feels threatened by her father. Why would a teenage girl say that she feels threatened by her father? And if a child expresses that they feel threatened by a parent, you have a duty of care, you have a responsibility to report that to social services. If you look here, it says guidance for safe working practice for adults who work with children and young people. And if you scroll down, all adults who work with children and young people have a crucial role to play in shaping their lives. They have a unique opportunity to interact with children and young people in ways that are both affirming and inspiring. This guidance has been produced to help adults working in all settings to establish safe and responsive environments which safeguard young people and reduce the risk of adults being unjustly accused of improper or unprofessional conduct. This means that these guidelines apply to all adults working in all settings, whatever their position, role, or responsibilities, may provide guidance where an individual's suitability to work with children and young people has been called into question. We've got duty of care. It says all adults who work with and on behalf of children are accountable for the way in which they exercise authority, manage risk, use resources, and safeguard children and young people. Whether working in a paid or voluntary capacity, these adults have a duty to keep children and young people safe and to protect them from sexual, physical, and emotional harm. Children and young people have a right to be treated with respect and dignity. It follows that trusted adults are expected to take reasonable steps to ensure the safety and well-being of children and young people. Failure to do so may be regarded as neglect. This means that adults should understand the responsibilities which are part of their employment or role, and be aware that sanctions will be applied if these provisions are breached. Always act and be seen to act in the child's best interests. Avoid any conduct which would lead to any reasonable person to question their motivations and intentions. Take responsibility for their own actions and behavior. She did the complete opposite of that. And I don't even think that it was a result of ignorance. I think what she did was motivated by malice and sadism towards me. And she felt sympathy for my abusive mother, whom she knew was abusive. Most daughters are generally very fond of their fathers. So if there's a young girl who's terrified of her father, how can there not be a good reason behind that? Saw Vrishni following a phone call from mum sharing concerns around worsening levels of anxiety and confrontations between them. Aggressive, increasingly difficult to reassure, it says. Increasingly difficult to reassure? What was I, a dementia patient? And that whole difficult to reassure thing appears many times throughout these documents. I think it appears on the next page as well. What the fuck do they mean by that? Next page. Getting worse, now difficult to reassure, says I want to talk to someone else. And then it says, Mum's reassurances make her worse. What's all this about reassurances? Was I some kind of dementia patient? Reassurances? Like, it's quite a strange thing to say, isn't it? That, because they're saying that my mother was constantly reassuring me and her reassurances didn't work. What they're conveying is that I was just hysterical and I wouldn't listen to reason and I was panicking for no reason, and that any reassurance given to me, I did not listen to. That's what they're trying to say. I want to know my rights. Weekends, terrible. And the reason they were terrible is because, of course, her husband came over. Next page. Mum described a significant improvement in levels of anxiety and anger over the last week. So over 1 week, I just magically transformed. And my so-called anxiety just disappeared. And next page, they've drawn a little circle. It says thoughts. What if I get bad grades? Feelings, sad, angry. Behavior, crying. Physical, heart rate up, butterflies. This circle diagram they've done here, I find quite amusing really, because they're trying to suggest as though these things are somehow an interconnected cycle to which there's no external cause or bigger reason why. It's just these 4 factors connected together, nothing more. It's like the water cycle that you learn about in 5th grade. Or even this, the Netflix cycle. Or this, the feel fat cycle. Or even this, book hangover cycle. Vrishni's mother described an overall improvement in Vrishni's presentation, including improved sleep, reduction, anxiety, improved appetite, and significantly less confrontations. They're almost trying to say, like, a few weeks of me sitting with them and me being in these sessions just somehow caused a magical improvement to every aspect of me. I'm suddenly sleeping well, I'm suddenly eating well, I'm suddenly not having confrontations. What is normal teenage behavior and what may be anxiety. Vrishni will continue thought diary and complete Beck's youth it's an inverse something, I can't read the handwriting, inventory, something like that. Again, fake bullshit help that doesn't really help at all. These people are not interested in genuinely helping people. They just want to look like they're helping people. That's their agenda. She stated that she found our sessions useful. Not at all. Nothing could be further from the truth. If there's a young girl who feels like a caged bird at home, I cannot believe. Vrishni was clear that she does not feel frightened or threatened by either of her parents now. Yet another thing that I never said. They're just fabricating. They're just making up lies that I never said. Vrishni deals with her differences Vrishni deals with her differences, Dad, by keeping out of his way when he's over. So that completely contradicts the first sentence. They've said that I don't feel frightened, and then they've said that I keep out of the father's way. Anxiety and stress were attributed to worry around her future and education. Chitra describes a steady and general improvement. They could have just said improvement. Steady and general. They always have to use 4 words where one will do. In Vrishni's behavior, no further extreme anger outbursts, less confrontations at night, improved relationship with Mum, and has been trying to persuade Vrishni to accept further help from CAMS. Is it surprising that my mother would say something like this? And is it any surprise that she's been trying to push me into more of these torture sessions? Look at this, it says Happy New Year. Is this the appropriate place for someone to exchange New Year's greetings? Is that what people do? Do people wish each other Happy New Year through someone else's medical records? It's just really bizarre stuff. out of all of these pages that you've seen, I actually think this is probably the most important one. And it's the last one as well that I'm going to be showing you. If you look here, it says, her father is also a doctor. I can tell you that he is not a doctor. He's never been a doctor. He's never done an MBBS. He doesn't have the title doctor and never has. He's never done a PhD to get the title doctor. So they've literally, can you imagine what kind of people would lie about being a doctor? In most countries, it's a crime. It's illegal to impersonate a doctor. And they refer to him as Dr. Siva. Dr. Siva, look at that, Dr. Siva. His surname is Sivakumaran. And his title is Mr. Vrishni is under extreme pressure at the moment due to her exams and the high expectations which she puts on herself. Again, they've really emphasized, they've made that emphasis that it's me just doing it all to myself. Ruminating on these things excessively. So that's some more gaslighting there. They're trying to suggest that my worries were irrational. Throughout the document, they try to suggest that my worries and concerns were irrational. And that's a form of gaslighting. Yeah, that's basically it. Oh, and there's one more page. I'm sorry, guys. There's one more page. It says, Dear Dr. Samasanbaram and Vrishni. I find that interesting. Look at the way they've addressed my mother using her title and her surname. But they've just said, and Vrishni. With me, there's no title and no surname, just first name. And then if you look here, they've spelt my name wrong. It says Vrishnia. Vrishnia's file. Vrishni can be re-referred at any time by seeking a referral via her GP. You see, there's one thing for me that stands out in all of this. Throughout these documents, they assert that this young girl who is high-functioning perfectionist, intelligent, works really hard at school, cares about getting good grades, very distressed, not happy, behaving badly, not getting on with her parents, scared of her father to the point where she doesn't even feel comfortable being in the same room as him. And they make the bold assertion that all of that could be just for no reason or just because of exam stress. Basically, they assert that a child who was that exceptional would be suffering that much for no good reason. And here's something even more interesting. On one hand, they say that I'm this smart, high-achieving teenager, and yet simultaneously they refer to me as a rebellious teenager. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've never heard of a rebellious teenager who works hard at school, tries to get good grades. It's just really, that's how you can tell that this is just nothing but corruption that's taken place here. Individuals like Catherine K. Small, or Catherine Nutcase as I like to call her, they go around calling themselves professionals when they don't even possess the most basic level of humanity. and decency. This time period was one of the worst times of my entire life. I was all alone. I was powerless. I didn't have anyone to protect me. And I was surrounded by all these vampires who didn't have good intentions towards me. It caused tremendous damage. Because back then I was a child who needed safeguarding and protection. And instead, what I got was a whole bunch of vampires